starting. Welcome back, guys. Today, I have a very special guest. He is 33 years in the industry, believe it or not, very long time. He's a production designer, lead concept designer, visual effects art director, and matte painter. He worked on Guardians of the Galaxy, Thor, Star Wars, and many other films that you probably watched. And I have been following his work for a while. I wanted to bring him on this podcast. His name is Sean Hargreaves. Welcome, Sean.
Thank you, DARMAR. Is DARMAR your nickname?
Yes, it's
Yeah.
Darko, my name, like Donnie Darko, but Dharma is the industry. They know me
Y-
as Dharma.
No, okay. Yeah. Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you.
The pleasure is mine. I have been looking at your work for quite a while. I know that you worked on some very big titles, and I'm very happy to see that you have been working on that kind of titles. But I also saw now when you mentioned 32 years, the first question that I will ask you and that I'm interested in is, did your style change a lot in those 32 years, or it stayed pretty much the same, just evolved in some other directions?
Well, that's a faceted answer. My technique changed because obviously I went through um, hand drawing all the way through Photoshop and then 3D. And so the visual of that will change. My design, I would say, um, it's evolved from what it was, but I think it's me. I don't think you can look back and look at the stuff I do now and not see a relationship. So yeah, it's evolved. I would say.
Yeah, that's what I was always wanted to ask somebody who's 32 years in the industry
Yeah.
is how much did the style evolve? Because it's fascinating to me. I'm in the industry for 12 years now. I have been a
Mhm.
car designer, but now I'm in this. And I see that you had many roles. How did that happen? How did you go from one role to another? Was it fluid or how was the transition going?
Well, when I started in 1991, and I started in storyboards, and then got into concept concept design, and I everything was done by hand, and I was doing very complicated drawings by hand. I mean, my line drawings it was line drawings and marker drawings, illustrations. It wasn't paint. Paint was later on, but it was a lot of detail work, on a light box and just constantly going over
Yeah.
the drawing until it was right. And all of the perspective that I was doing, it took a lot of time. And because of that, after a few years, I was getting quite tired of it. And so I started looking into where I was going to go next. And I was looking into, well, maybe I could get into art direction or production design. And I talked to production designer Tom Foden who was doing a lot of stuff with Mark Romanek, who was a famous video director and beautiful work. And I asked him, I did some illustrations for him, and I asked him if I could be an art director, and he he said, "Yeah, you can be my art director on my next job." So I kind of got away from a concept art in that sense in films and started art directing, and art direction has kind of changed now in films because back then films and videos and TV. Back then, it was very strict in terms of, I had to learn how to draft. I had to learn how to make models of the sets, and I had to supervise the building of the sets. And it was all encompassing, and I went from art direction, and then I got hired at Industrial Light and Magic. I had sent my work up there, and I had done some work for them. But then out of the blue, I got a call from Industrial Light and Magic to production design some commercials. So it was my
No,
first job as a commercial production design. As a production designer, was to work at Industrial Light and Magic, which was unbelievable. So I went there, and uh, that place is unbelievable to work at. I mean, the movie that changed my life. I mean, two movies really influenced me was 2001 and Star Wars. And when I went there, the first day I was there, I walked into the model shop because they still had a model shop. And Lorne Peterson, who's a famous model maker, was working on the Sandcrawler from Star Wars.
Okay.
And I walked into the miniature effect stage where they shoot the miniatures, and they had a Star Destroyer, the big triangle ship they were
Yeah.
shooting. And why were they shooting that? Well, it was a tie-in with the new movies that they were making, 1 through 3. So they were doing these advertisements and things like that. So, but for me, I was a young guy, I think 30 years old, and I was in heaven, walking around, and so yeah, it was fantastic. And so I did these commercials there, and that was my production designer segue into that, and I say, if you want to move up, you have to. No one's going to come to you really. You have to tell them. You have to send up a message that I want to do this or I want to do that, and then you'll find out whether they're interested, and you just got to keep pushing. So that's what I did, and that's how I got to those positions.
I think that many people, and I'm very happy that you said that, because many people don't mention that you need to put yourself on the market. They just sit down and wait, and
Yeah.
it doesn't work like that. You need to send CVs, actually not CVs, portfolio all the time. That's how I did
Mm,
it also. But
yeah.
once you enter the industry, it's much easier because the doors start opening. I
Yeah.
mean, it is easier because people start to know about you. If you're doing good work, they come back to you. And
Mm,
I'm very happy that you mentioned that. And
yeah.
I can imagine how happy you were when you entered ILM and you were there and seeing
Mm,
everything. Like it was a dream. It was a
it was
dream,
a
I'm
dream.
sure.
Yeah, it was. It was really fun, and Doug Chang, who ran the art department there, and who was the production designer for those first 3 films. They were building all of the models for the first 3 films, 1 through 3, and I would work and work and work, and I would take a break, and I would go and get a coffee, and I would walk around and look at all of this stuff, and they were building my things for my commercial, but they were also building for the film. So yeah, it was really awesome to see that.
Yeah. I mean, seeing I remember when I first time saw my thing, it's very rewarding, let's call it like that. All the hard work, once you see it, those 10 seconds, literally
Yeah,
your heart is full.
yeah, it's a great feeling to see it actually, especially on the big screen. It's fantastic.
Yeah, yeah, you worked on many movies, I saw. Is there any specific one that you like the most, or
Well, it's funny, I get asked that a lot, and uh, one of the I'm known for doing sci-fi stuff because I'm a designer, and sci-fi
that's why I
allows you to
told you, that's
design.
why I told you,
Yeah,
because of sci-fi.
yeah, but sci-fi allows you to design, right? If you do
Yeah,
fantasy, if you do like Lord of the Rings, it's design, but it's based on something else. And sci-fi is something that you can have nothing on the paper and then you design something. And I like that. I like solving those kind of problems. But I'm known for that. And but one of the films I'm most proud of, there's a couple of early films that I'm proud of working on. One was called Seven, with David Fincher directed, and another one that Michael Mann directed called Heat. And they were not science fiction films; they were normal. They were normal present day films, but they were excellent films. I'm very proud of being involved in those films. In terms of my work, the work that I think that was showcased the most was probably in recent times was probably Star Trek Beyond.
okay,
And there's a new show coming out on Apple Plus called For All Mankind. I've done a bunch of spacecraft and ground vehicles for that, so that will showcase a lot of my work as well. I'm pretty proud of that work as well. But yeah, so those are the films. I mean, there's others as well. I mean, I'm proud of a lot of the films I've worked on. Sometimes you get on a project, as you know, and you work really hard, and it doesn't come out like you thought it was going to come out. and
Absolutely.
but you have no control over that. You can only do the best you can do, and they're gonna do what they're gonna do.
Yeah. Sometimes the project even dies and we
Yeah,
don't even see it. It
yeah,
sucks, but it's what can we do? It's our life. We chose it.
yeah. Oh, I got hired. I think it was a year and a half ago on a new Star Trek film, and
Oh,
we spent, I think, about 3 months designing some amazing stuff, really fun, cool stuff, redesigning a lot of stuff, and it went down. It went away,
yeah.
and they wanted to rewrite it, but then they stopped that. So now I have a whole portfolio of really cool Star Trek stuff, and I can't show it
Yeah,
because
yeah.
it's not been released. And one of it's those kind of things where you wonder when you can ever show it, if it'll ever come back. So I don't know, maybe in the future.
Hopefully in the future. Maybe they
Yeah,
restart it, but they should use the
yeah,
same designs. Who knows? Who knows? I
yeah,
hope they do.
yeah.
It is soul crushing, really, when I hear this kind of stories. I mean, I experienced some similar things, but it is soul crushing. I don't know. Do you ever get used to it? I still didn't get used to it.
um yeah, I get used to it. In the 90s, we worked on a lot of films at Warner Brothers, and they all went down, and
Oh,
it was it was funny because you just ended up just working on jobs, and you would get paid, obviously, but your job would go nowhere, and we were all wondering what was going on. But not recently. Recently, it's been pretty good, except for Star Trek. I've been pretty lucky. I work pretty consistently. We're on a strike right now. I haven't worked for 6 months because the film business has
I'm
been on a
very aware of
strike.
that.
Yeah, so
It's, it's
it's
it
been pretty.
sucks. I can say that
Yeah,
it's
it's it's been pretty treacherous. I don't know what they're going to have next year because for entertainment, because there's nothing being made. So we'll see.
I'm in a shock, to be honest, that the strike is this long. I mean, I understand that it's
Yeah,
happening, but this long, so many of us are suffering because of it. I
yeah,
mean, 6 months no work, same for me. I'm in the gaming, thanks God, also,
mm,
so there is some other work there.
yeah,
But so many people now in a problem. I'm reading every day on LinkedIn, on Facebook, on my social media, everywhere people looking for work.
mm,
But I hope that it will speed up, and
yeah.
catch up very soon.
Well, the problem is that it's the AI thing.
Yeah.
That's the problem that they're stuck on right now, is they can't agree to the AI problem, and it's a problem everywhere, but there's certainly a problem on this strike, so they have to figure that out. It's going to affect everybody.
Yeah. What do you think about AI? What is your opinion about it? Did you use it?
No, I don't. I refuse to use it. I've tried it because I have to. When you have opinion about something, you have to try it in order to have an opinion,
Absolutely.
right?
I
So
tried it
people
also.
go,
Yeah, I
yeah,
tried it.
yeah. People go, oh, you tried it. Well, yeah, I had to try it to have an opinion whether I, on what it was about. So my problem with AI images is, in terms of concept design, is you cannot associate the word design with an AI image from Midjourney, because if you are a designer, there are certain parameters and steps that you take to get to that image, and the image, the beautiful painting, is merely it's the communication of all these steps, meeting these parameters that you have come to. And the AI images, they are seductive, and that's all people are looking at, the seduction of the beautiful image. But they're completely worthless in terms of why. Why is this like this? Why is this like this? It doesn't make sense. So I think what's going to happen with art departments and AI, I think what's going to happen with production designers. Um, is that by the way, I haven't production designed for a while. I went back to doing concept design, so I work a lot with production designers. But I think what's going to happen is that they are going to make we call them lookbooks, which is basically when they start a film, they make a book of all of the kind of look of the film, and they'll go to Google Images and they'll get all these images together and make a presentation of architecture or whatever, and that is their look for the film. And I think what's going to happen is they will use those AI Midjourney images that they will find or make themselves as a look for the film, and then they will hand it to concept artists just like they handed Google Images, and they'll say, um, "This is the look for the film," um, and then you look at it and you put it aside and you do your thing. It's in
Yeah,
your memory. It's in your memory now, right? What I
yeah,
don't want to, what I think is going to be dangerous and what should not happen is if you, as a concept designer, if you're given a mid-journey image or a stable diffusion or whatever, and you're asked to paint over the top, because that's just disrespectful, you know.
yeah,
They should be hiring you for your abilities and give you something that you can use as a guide, but not to be too literal. That's my feeling. That's my feeling about AI. It's obviously not going to go away. I think the thing that me and you and other concept artists are going to have to watch out for is how it will be integrated into the art department and how it will affect our design process and our pipeline.
yeah. Now, when you said it, I want to ask you this. I mean, new technologies appear all the time. AI is, let's call it a new technology, but for me, it's not a new technology because it does everything for you. It's not
Yeah,
like 3D when it appeared. You still had to know things, to learn things. With AI, it's just press of a button. Do you have a feeling that there is a possibility that there will be more strikes? Because one thing that AI does absolutely is when you press the button, you get a, let's say, a beautiful image. Let's say it evolves, you get a beautiful design. But for me, it takes completely my purpose of life
yeah, absolutely,
because I do get a great design with it. And second thing it takes for me is my style.
exactly.
Everything is unified. Do you think
Yeah.
that we are already going a little bit down with the quality of movies, not in a concept design art, but what I mean by that is that everything is starting to look alike.
Hmm.
Will this make it even more look alike? That's my question.
It will, but that all goes down
How do
to
we fight it?
education.
How do we fight it? That's the thing. How do we fight it?
How do you fight it? Well, you have to refuse to use it. You know, the problem is that people are going to want to get jobs, and bosses of those people are going to take advantage of that. You know,
Yeah.
I'm in a good position because I've been around for a while and people respect me. But if you're a young concept artist, 1, 2, 3 years out of school, you're going to be taken advantage of, and it's up to them to. Everyone has to collectively say no to um, having to use the idea directly. That's the thing, and you know, there's a lot of insecure people out there, and the insecure people will be the first ones to use it because they have nothing to lose, right? The ones that will use it the most are the ones that have nothing to lose. If we use it, we have a lot to lose. We have our style to lose. We have our designs to lose. We have a lot to lose, and that's why a lot of us are fighting it because it's like we never asked for AI. I never needed AI. I'm perfectly capable of coming up with a design myself, and so are all my friends. You know, we never asked for this. This was put upon us by other people, and the corporations will embrace it because it's you can produce so much of it. I mean, look, this is kind of getting to a big discussion, but production designers, I know on shows I've worked on, they like a lot of work. You know, when they start out, they like to have the walls full of images, and most of the time they're just images. I mean, you look at 5 images, you get blind because it's like, okay, there's so many images. Now AI, you can produce what, 200 images in like 30 minutes.
Yeah,
Um, and then what are you going to do? You're going to print those out and put them on the wall, and everyone's going to be blind. So it's like, I think what's going to happen is there's going to be some kind of sorting out. There's going to be some kind of settling. The water is like this right now, but I think it's going to. I do believe it will settle, and people will position themselves, and it'll get organized. I have positive feelings about it, but we have to be, as artists, we have to be tough.
absolutely. This is the first time that we really need to unite together, but to
Yeah,
really unite and fight it because, as you said, some people are using it, and
yeah,
that's okay. But don't tell me that you're Messiah because you're using it and all of a sudden you're a great artist. You're not. You
yeah,
sucked it out. You're using it because you sucked and you didn't want to learn to be good at it.
yeah,
And that's the biggest problem. And it's literally like a fight. They're
yeah,
saying we are not artists, we are greedy. I don't get it, but okay,
yeah,
it's their thing. However, I think that there is also one more possibility that will happen. The AI needs to be regulated and it needs to be restricted.
yeah,
When that happens, and it will, there is no question about it, it will be regulated.
yeah.
I don't think it will have a quality. I don't think
What's
it will.
Do I think
The
what?
quality. I
The
don't think it will
quality?
have the quality. Yeah.
No, but I think it will be regulated because it has to be regulated. We're only talking about the visual aspects of it, but AI is going to affect everything. So it's going to be a big thing of AI that's going to need to be regulated, or there's just going to be every country in the world is going to have a lot of unemployment. So it's the
In
economy is going to
everything, not just
change.
art. In
Yeah,
everything, not just art, right?
yeah. Everything is going to change. So it's like it's the famous line from Dr. Malcolm in Jurassic Park that we keep quoting. You were so obsessed with if you could, you didn't even think about if you should.
Yeah.
So this is the problem right now. They're so happy that they actually created this thing, and now some of them are actually going, "Wow, that's kind of maybe we shouldn't have done that." So they created
Yeah.
a monster.
They did create the monster. It's absolutely a freaking monster. I'm
Yeah,
hoping for the best, Sean. I'm hoping for the best.
yeah.
Tell me, you have been 32 years in the industry. Is when 3D came, was it the same like with AI now? There was a lot of fear, or how was it then?
There was fear, and I got into 3D because of the same reason that I got into art direction was because um, I I when I'm drawing, I'm thinking in 3D, and I have to draw the other side,
Yeah.
right? And then I have to draw the bottom, and then I have to draw the top. So in 3D, I was like, I want to learn 3D so I can do that. So that's the reason I got into 3D. But yeah, I mean, before 3D, there was Photoshop, and um, everyone's like, oh, you didn't even draw those trees. You just pulled the trees in from a photograph. And but the thing is with concept design, and I still feel the same about it, is that I'm not a god, right? I'm not going to spend hours painting clouds and trees and water. I will spend time on my design because I'm hired for my design. But you have a lot of people out there, they get upset that everything isn't painted and everything isn't some of the stuff is photo bash. I don't photo bash too much, but I know that a lot of people have a problem with it. And but I always say, what's your purpose in this image? Your purpose is designing this. I don't know this landing pad in the forest or whatever. You're going to spend hours on the forest, or you're going to spend the time on the landing pad. So
Yeah. Yeah.
that's time used wisely. Um, but yeah, that was a a lot of people, because we were all hand drawing stuff when Photoshop came in. Everyone was like, "Well, you don't have to do anything," and there was a bit of this, and then the same thing with 3D came in. But the difference between Photoshop and 3D and what's happening with, for example, AI, is that you have the ultimate control over all those elements. You're still designing in Photobash and Photoshop. You're still designing in 3D,
Yeah.
but there's a lot of stuff. I'm sorry, but you're not designing when you're typing in prompts. There's
You're
huge
prompting.
gap. Yeah,
You're
there's huge
prompting.
gaps being filled in. I mean, saying that the car is backlit and it's a front three quarter and it's a sports car. Those three things. That's not design.
Yeah.
So there's a big difference between. That's why I say it's not. It's only a tool if you use it as some kind of inspiration, but I can't see myself using it to build an airlock for some spacecraft. It's just too technical for that.
uh, it takes the essence completely of art and purpose of my life, as I like to say. As you
Yeah,
said, that it completely takes the feeling out.
yeah,
That explorer's mind, when you need to explore the things to find the right balance
sure.
between technical and the shape and everything. And what is also sad for me and really sad is that people are losing their voices. Everything
Yeah,
looks the same, but they're also not designing anything new. They're
yeah,
chasing the shapes, which
yeah,
happened with car design. And I can compare it with that. 60 years ago, the latest improvement in cars was electric cars because it changed the technical position of the wheels and the battery and everything, and we could design something new. And the car designers are mostly stylists, and now
yeah,
designers are becoming stylists, and
yeah,
that defeats the purpose of life for me, because we are explorers. We need to find something new. I didn't
yeah.
see a single one thing was cool that I saw from AI. The new was capybara, that was like a dress. It was the only cool thing that I saw, and I'm not
Yeah,
joking because it was new, it was fresh, capybara dress, and I was like,
yeah,
"This is cool." The
yeah.
second thing that was cool: airplanes that had glass domes on top when they were flying. That
Right.
was the second thing. Beside that,
Yeah,
I didn't see much new. Everything is already done, and they are
yeah,
just combining it literally. So yeah, it's very
yeah,
strange.
yeah. Um, yeah. When I came up, we had a few guys, about five guys: Ron Cobb, Sid Mead, Ralph McQuarrie,
Yeah,
H.R. Giger, and Mobius.
what
And
again?
every one of those guys, you just look at their work. You didn't have to look at the name, and you knew who it was, right? Every one of those guys had a distinct style. And then when Photoshop came in, um, everyone's style kind of looked similar, because I call it 5 steps to success, because someone will say, "Oh, I love how you did that. How did you do that?" Okay, here's step number one, step number two, step number three, and then they would copy that and then would have the exact same result. You couldn't ask Sid Mead the same question. You would not get the same results. So Photoshop is, you have so much of an opportunity to succeed rather than fail. You know, that's why there are so many amazing images out there, because it by drawing by hand, you really only have one or two chances. But Photoshop, you can adjust and adjust and adjust and adjust and adjust, and for an hour you can adjust, and then finally. And so that's one of the things I want to point out about Photoshop. What Photoshop did in terms of, it's slowly, since Photoshop, it's slowly been taking out the personality of the artist. But there's still artists out there that, you know, obviously, Dylan Cole's work,
Yeah.
Sparth's work, certain people's work really stands out. But it's interesting. I was a car designer too. I started out
Oh,
in car
nice.
design. Yeah. I worked for 3 years at General Motors Advanced Concept Center, and I was working on a concept car, the front end of a concept car, and I was just doing so many of this front end. And I did. As I tell this story, my boss was like, "Make the lights bigger and wider, and all of the." And I ended up doing like 50 front ends, just 50. And somewhere in there, there's gonna be something. So at the same time, my friend Jacques Ray, who is a guy I went to school with, who was working for James Cameron on Terminator 2, and I saw his work, and he was doing all of the Terminator 2 stuff, which was amazing. And I I ended up leaving GM to work in film. He helped me with some connections, and my first job was doing storyboards in the commercial. So, but that was interesting that you started in car design. I think that program I went to Art Center really helped me, the industrial design program, with what I'm doing today. So, car design actually was a good thing for me.
Yeah, I mean, car design is incredible, learning proportions and
Yeah,
shape and surface. But
yeah,
exactly the same story that you say, I say that same story. I mean, I was kicked out of car design because of my passport. People know that, but
yeah,
I left it. I didn't try it anymore because uh, I was doing side of the car, 300 sides where we were moving one line, 1 millimeter up, one
right.
millimeter down, and I was like, maybe this is not for me. I wanted it
Mm,
with my heart, but here maybe this is not for me because I'm so bored. I'm so bored. I'm not a stylist. I mean, no
mm,
disrespect to them. And then I saw Art Station, and that's how my transition started to happen to concept art because I saw,
mm,
okay, this is the place where I can design. And it's so funny to me that you had a similar experience because you're like, I want
yeah.
more from this.
Yeah. Well, I think also when you get out of school, your mind is exploding. I mean, when I was my first job, I was 24 and
Yeah,
doing car design, and I was pretty young, and you my father said I had an overactive imagination, but I think a lot of us do, and to contain that imagination into doing these finite things, and it does drive a young person crazy. It takes a certain kind of personality, I would say, and I think that both you and myself and others have ended up in the right spot. I think I teach as well, and I experience a lot of the other end of that is there's a lot of we say wannabe concept artists. They like playing games. They see the concept art. They want to be a concept artist, but they don't really, they go to school for it, but it's not really in them. You know what I mean? And so um, a lot of them flood the marketplace, and that's what you see when you see a lot of the stuff in ArtStation. There's very similar stuff. Very hard to stand out. Even for me, it's hard to stand out because there's so much stuff. Um, So I think that you can go to school for all of this stuff and learn all this stuff, but there's a certain percentage of you that you have to put into it that will make you stand apart. If you don't put that percentage in, then you will just be the same uh, as everyone else, and it's hard to stand apart.
I absolutely agree. I mean, there is tons of work on ArtStation, but there is a second thing that I see 90% of it doesn't work. I mean, we
Yeah,
are not making production design where we are designing something that has to work like a car, but
yeah,
it has to work in a some similar fashion, a little bit loose than that 20
yeah,
30%. But you see a lot of on art station beautiful shapes, beautiful styling, but it doesn't work.
yeah,
It's not usable in a movie. It's not usable in game. You can sort of, however,
yeah.
games are catching up with movies. They're not loose anymore. Where do you
Mm.
teach now? Do you have a workshop or?
Well, I taught for 5 years at my old school, Art Center College of Design, and now I teach at the Center for Creative Studies, the College for Creative Studies in Detroit.
Okay.
Um, and they have a also an entertainment design program. My friend Tim Flattery runs it, and I've known him for God, almost 40 years now. So he asked me to go over there, and so I've been teaching there for 5 years, and it's good. It's good program. There's lots of really good people out there, really good
Yeah,
artists that come in. But I say the way to look at a concept art piece is look at it as try and look at it, even if it's a painting, try and look at it as a line drawing. And if you look at it as a line drawing, it will reveal everything. And I have my students in one of my classes, come up with ideas, but only do the line drawing. Don't even shade it, don't paint it, just a tight line drawing in pen and ink, and it will reveal to you if it works. And it's a really good exercise because once you get into 3D, it's the same thing. 3D, you cannot cheat. It will reveal to you if it's working or not. And it's a good thing to be able to paint and a good thing to be able to do 3D, because both of those bounce off each other.
That's absolutely something I say, and I'm very happy to hear that you're saying the same thing, Sean, because I was always saying that they balance each other and they help each other in
Yeah.
every direction.
Mm.
But with 3D, the first thing that I learned, because I started with 3D and then I moved to design with 2D and so on, is that
Mhm.
3D is too rigid. It's too rigid. It can destroy your design. You get
Yeah.
lost in it, and it needs to be. It really needs to be to balance it out. I
Yeah.
had a similar problem with ZBrush, but then I
Mhm.
got the hang of it because it was too loose and I would over detail things.
Yeah.
And it's so interesting that you say the same thing. I'm very happy to hear this.
Yeah. Yeah. It's always. I mean, idea is it's always good to. I went through a period where I would get a project and I would go immediately into 3D, and I was subservient to the tools. And but now I do these little kind of crappy sketches to work out the problems before I even go to 3D. And these sketches, I never show them to anybody because they are crappy sketches, because they're just figuring things out. Only I will understand them. And I think it's good to do that. I think it's good to start with a sketch and work out a lot of the problems, because 3D, my God, you can spend so long on something that is so tiny, and it just the whole day goes away.
That's true. That's true. But the sketches are the juiciest thing about design. For me, I have also where I sketch the small sketches, which is
Yeah,
tiny. I call them shit sketches. I apologize
yeah,
for language, but they solve everything, and then I go can do everything because I already know in my head. Okay, this works, this doesn't. Let's go here.
yeah, yeah. We call them chicken scratch because it's like a little chicken scratching. And
That's it. That's
um,
it.
yeah. And sometimes, you'll be at a restaurant or something, or a diner, and you'll have an idea that's bothering you, and you'll draw something on a napkin. We call them napkin sketches. Just anything at any time. You should always have something to sketch on, and have a little sketchbook by your bed if you need, and wake up in the middle of the night. Oh yeah. Next morning it might
I have
might be terrible,
a
but at
couple of
least you.
them always with me. I always have
Yeah,
a couple of them with me in the car,
yeah,
everywhere. A couple of them
yeah,
just so I can. It makes me feel fresh when I do it. It makes me very
yeah,
liberated and fresh. There is something about that hand-eye arm connection. I
yeah,
just love it.
yeah.
John, how would you advise now young people to develop their talent? Because is with AI, it's getting harder. But what would you advise to them to develop the talent, the develop the that talent of theirs to have a unique voice?
Um, I would say that you don't be discouraged by the new technology, whatever it is. There's always going to be something new coming. Don't be discouraged by it. I would just do the same processes that we always do. Learn how to draw, learn how to paint, learn how to design. Really learn how to design. Um, the design is what's going to set you apart. Um, Even if you're doing animation backgrounds, you want to have a style. Visual development is very important in animation. Um, Understand composition. Look at masters paintings. Go to the museums, um, and by get inspired by stuff that has nothing to do with concept art. Um, I try to get my students away from that, and some of the assignments. What I'll do is I'll basically say, um, here's a tree, and um, here is a car, a wheel of a car. Combine them and make a robot. And by doing that, you make them think outside what they're used to thinking. Because if you don't, what happens is they will look at a robot to design a robot. And you don't want to do that, because it will be derivative of the robot that you already have. Um,
Yeah,
so I say to yeah, learn painting, learn huge emphasis on design, because the design is what goes in the film and the game, not your illustration. And no matter how good you are at illustrating, and yeah, study those things, and it's really hard to find a really good illustrator and a really good designer. But if you can be that person, put them together, you've got something special. And that's what people are looking for, you know. And the AI thing, don't let that discourage you. It's going to be around, and I don't think that it's going to be like a firestorm where all artists will be removed. I just don't think the human race is like that. I have hope. Artists have survived through many, many things over thousands and thousands of years. We will continue. So it's just another hiccup, as we say, or another bit of technology to navigate.
Yeah, we did survive. People don't understand that they, in the middle century, they literally burned us when we mentioned new cool things. They wanted to hang us and burn us.
Yeah,
It was like that. I
yeah,
mean, the history repeats itself.
yeah. Well, there's a quote, I think it's Emperor Nero in Rome said, keep the artists out of the city, they're dangerous.
Yeah, yeah, yes, yeah, yeah. That's true. That's true.
It's
I love it.
funny.
I love it. I love it. Because we push everything. We push the boundaries. We make questions where other people don't, and we demolish things. I like to say like that because we need to
Yeah,
demolish them to find something better and new. And
yeah,
nobody likes when you are demolishing something. You're a
yeah,
vandal, hooligan.
yeah, yeah. Well, we create a lot of stuff, and it's hard for artists to be leaders because we're thinking about creating things. That it's kind of a dichotomy, you know. A lot of artists that go into leadership, like a production design, they end up doing a lot of meetings and less drawings and illustrations. So it's something to think about, you know. We do a lot of the creating, and you know, it's fun. I mean, it's one of the reasons I got back into concept design, is because um, I just, it's in me. I missed it. I've done it. I've drawn since I was a kid, and it kind of stopped for a while. So it's funny because when I production designed commercials for 17 years. I did a couple of smallish films, and I used Photoshop now and then, but not too much. It had really grown during that time, and when I started coming back. I worked at a company called Rhythm and News, which is a visual effects company, and I got hired to do matte paintings, and I'd never done a matte painting before. And they gave me, they said, okay, we're going to start you on this matte painting. It's something that was already done, but we need you to change it. So I got this matte painting. I opened up the Photoshop file, and you know, there were all of these layers with like these there were adjustment masks, you know. There
Yeah.
were masks on the right hand side, and the black. And I was like, what is this? I had no idea what it was. So I ended up erasing uh, all of the masks, and the whole image just went crazy, you know. And I was like, oh no! I was like, what have I done? You know. So yeah, I had to go home, and I spent so long looking at tutorials on Photoshop, because my Photoshop that I knew was totally different than this Photoshop. And so 20 that was in 2013. So yeah, I learned a lot since then, on that kind of stuff. I'm pretty proficient now.
Thanks God there is a Control Z. There is Control Z. Undo,
Yeah.
undo.
Yes, thank God for Control Z. Yeah.
When you say 2014, I always remember Feng Zhu when he started to post his tutorials,
Yeah.
and there was a lot on the internet, and everybody was trying to copy him. But what
Yeah.
I'm fascinated now, when you said that, somehow my brain just connected it. 2023, not a lot of people still have his style, even though there has been hundreds of his students. They are
Yeah.
still not on his level because it's hard to copy it.
Well, I don't know if it's a pipeline thing. I mean, I know I can only speak from my experience. when I talk about the pipeline, I have to use 3D. Um, and the reason I use 3D is because of the reason I told you before, but also because of the pipeline that we use in films. Is that if I build a spacecraft, then that spacecraft, once it's approved, is handed off um, to previs
Yeah,
and also to visual effects, and then they have a model to build from, and it's a direct approved model. Um, if I did the Feng Zhu technique, which is a beautiful technique, I love his work. Um, I know that he doesn't use 3D. I don't know if he does now, but um,
I don't think he does.
that's kind of an old-fashioned way of working in concept design, as far as I'm concerned. Whereas where you're as a designer, you're limiting yourself to a certain period of time working on that film. So what I'm saying is, I can paint and I can do 3D, and because of that, the time I spent on a film is a long time. If I only did my usual old painting technique, um, after a while, they would hand off those designs to a 3D modeler who would interpret it. And inevitably, that interpretation will change. So when you
Yeah,
see the film or you see the game, you're like, oh, that's not how it was supposed to be. Um, so I say, I think what you said there is interesting, because I think that's what's happened is a lot of people have gone into 3D because they can use that. I could be wrong, but that's my experience.
yeah. I absolutely agree with you now when you said it, because from my experience, as we said, 2D bounces of 3D and 3D bounces of 2D.
Yeah,
But it's great because you are longer on a project. That's one thing. But the second thing is, as you said, the design is changing. It
yeah,
does change. But when you do only 2D, no matter how skillful you are, when you go to 3D, you will see that some parts don't connect.
yeah,
They just don't want to connect, no matter how skillful you are.
yeah,
And that's when 3D is amazing, because what you give to
yeah,
VFX guys, previs, is exactly how it will look. They will maybe add details, maybe change a little bit, but it won't go too much from the design. Of course,
yeah,
depending from the director. But if you give a 2D sketch, it's changing completely.
yeah. I think Feng's stuff is I think his whole thing is that he sets a tone. He sets a look for whatever the scene is, and
Mm.
that's all he wants to do, which is fine. He'll do some illustrations, and okay, this is the look for this game, and then he's happy to hand that off, and then they take it further. It depends on the artist.
Yeah. Uh, what I want to ask you is, when you're designing something, is there any specific point that you enjoy the most doing? For example, I like the most when I have the everything laid out and I can place the shapes. Is there anything that you enjoy the most?
Um, um, Finishing.
Finishing
I
good.
like. I actually like both ends. I like the finish. I like the beginning, the very beginning, coming up with the ideas, and then the very end when you're finishing and everything is fallen into place and it's looking nice and it's all everything is justified. Uh, I like that. I mean, I like sketching, and I like painting and lighting, and putting the icing on the cake of the final finishes of the illustration.
Okay,
Yeah. What about
that's
you?
that's. Well, I like when I bounce everything and I create that it's working, so functionality is there, and then I start adding shapes that I will refine, that I will
Yeah.
start refining. For me, that's the part that I
Yeah.
really enjoy. It doesn't make me tired. It doesn't exhaust me. It's
Mm,
liberating, literally, for me.
yeah. Because the first step, I always say the first step is the hardest. Whatever that is, if you're given a spacecraft or a building, um, how can you make that building different? And the first step, getting that shape correct or unique, is it takes a lot of time. And a lot of time, people they go they go past that initial stage fast into the detail. But what they should do is concentrate on that first step. Spend a
Yeah.
lot of time on that first step, and once you got that right, that will determine how much detail you need to add. If you don't have that first step right, then you will depend on the detail, and you end up with a lot of garbage. So
Yeah.
um, I spend a lot of time, and it's fun on that first step. It's hard. I mean, sometimes I'll spend days on that first step. On a show, I'll probably spend a few hours on it, but it's a harder step, but it's really rewarding when you produce something that's interesting.
It is. It feeds the soul somehow, you know. And I
Yeah,
always say to people, uh, because of Photoshop of 3D, as we mentioned, they started to over detail things, and the software started to use them. They are not using software
yeah,
using them. When that happens, it's a tragedy. I
yeah,
had a great sentence from one car designer, Mark Johnson. He designed BMW X5, and he
mm,
said, when he saw me doing 3D, he said, Darko, don't let 3D ride your design, you ride the design.
yeah,
And he was absolutely right,
yeah,
because if I continue doing it like that, I would get completely lost,
yeah,
completely.
yeah,
And it's interesting, you know. And he said, no, no, he didn't say that, but somebody said, I remember in company, they said, uh, great wheels can save horrible surfacing in car, but
yeah,
great surfacing can save great wheels.
yeah,
Which
yeah.
is very true. Which is very
Makes
true, you
sense.
know.
Yeah, yeah, and you see it in 3D. I mean, the kit bashing. It's the same thing. It's
Yeah.
just in 3D, and you end up with all of these pre-made parts. But you have to say at some point, you have to say, where are you in here? Where is your personality in this thing you created? So yeah, it's a balance.
Uh, Kitbash, when it came, it's still there. I
Yeah,
very openly said that for me, that is not design. I
yeah,
mean, there are people that use Kitbash, but they create their Kitbashes and then
yeah,
they spend years creating them.
yeah,
But using somebody else's Kitbash and you are attaching it, for me, that's just not a design. It's
yeah,
playing with
yeah,
Lego, literally.
yeah,
And companies are forcing that more and more now, the smaller ones, because of the budgets,
yeah,
but somehow it just doesn't do the justice to a designer.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
It's devaluing the talent of the designer. You know, it's like you hired someone for their work and then you devalue it. So it kind of sucks. You got to keep an eye on all of that.
I
You,
agree. I
you got to have
absolutely
pride,
agree.
pride in your work.
Yeah, yeah. You need to protect yourself.
Yeah. Um, I mean, I use Kitbash for little engines on spacecraft, but the whole spacecraft is mine. Little,
That's completely okay.
y-
20% from my experience
yeah,
works perfectly. I
yeah,
mean,
little detaily things, but
but
the
if
big,
you take the whole arm of a Mac and you put it and you just stretch it, I mean, for me,
yeah,
that's not a
yeah,
design.
I know,
And I've been
I know,
seeing that people stretch it. I saw some concept art from some movie. I can't remember which one, but it had literally concept designers were using full props they were using and putting on the like a piece of I think it was a Walkman, putting it on a gun, and
mm,
I was like, try to hide it a little bit at least, you know.
yeah,
So it was a very strange moment. I mean, industry is very fast. It's very
yeah.
fast. But
Yeah, but you were trained as an industrial designer, right? Were you trained as what were you trained
bachelor in
at?
industry, bachelor
Yeah,
in industry, and then
yes,
masters in car design.
yeah. So you went through the same program as me, and it's a strict
Uh,
program.
I doubt that. I doubt that because you went to one of the best universities. I went here in Belgrade, so I doubt
Uh,
that. You know, you
well,
went to.
but the principles are the same,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
um, my school is actually one of the most expensive schools, by the way.
It is. I know. I know. I was asking my father to go there when he saw it. He was like, "No, no." But
Yeah,
CCS is also, they are top-notch schools. There is no
yeah,
question about it. They are
yeah,
top-notch schools.
yeah. Well, but what I'm saying is, the I think a lot of these schools that teach concept art, they're not teaching the design. That they're showing tricks,
Mm,
and that
yeah.
that you know, it's very hard for these students to stand apart because they're not putting themselves into they're not putting effort into standing apart by by doing some, because they don't know what design is. They don't have any education in design or history of design. It's very, very important. You have to teach this in schools, and then you'll start seeing a difference in a lot of concept. But most of the best concept stuff I see on ArtStation is designed, and it's stuff that stands out and is beautiful, beautiful work. So that's
Yeah,
what I
absolutely.
gravitate to. Yeah,
Me too. But what is fascinating, I mentioned this on the couple of podcasts before, when you open ArtStation and when you check which work is the most liked, character design,
yeah,
and it's not even design, it's illustration.
yeah.
But the second most liked work is weapons.
Right.
It's never spaceships, it's never vehicles, it's weapons. And
I yeah,
so strange, so strange, you know?
yeah. I think that has to do with gamers playing um, um, uh, point POV shoot point and shoot games where they get to choose the characters, they get to choose the clothing, they get to choose the weapons, and so that's their interest. That's what they
Oh, yeah.
consider. That's their connection to concept design. And so when they go into concept design, that's what they know. I have a lot of students who they're obsessed with characters and they're really good at drawing them, because they've drawn them that they're really into them. And then I say, well, put this character in an environment and it falls apart because they're not interested in that. So I absolutely agree with you. There's so many character designers out there.
Yeah, it's yeah, and somebody said that it's because of their faces that we connect with their faces also.
Mm,
So
yeah.
people which are not concept artists or not on a high level, they don't go into detail, but they're like, oh, this is a
Mm,
person as me. I connect the brain automatically, subconsciously
yeah.
connects it.
That's
But
interesting. That's very interesting. That's like photography. I do photography, and people, you get the most reactions you get from people are photographs of people because they
same as me.
look at the face. Yeah. So it's
Same as
interesting.
in Instagram. When you open Instagram, if there is a post with a face,
Yeah.
70% more chance that it will get a like than a body, hand, or something like that, or a composition.
Yeah.
Just it's fascinating. And when you said that they need to learn design, from my experience, it's very hard to teach design because design is in us. It's not in somebody. I mean, there are rules. Scott
Yeah.
Robertson was closest to teaching design, but eventually it ended as a skillful book, technicality, how to draw and stuff like that with
Yeah.
the tricks. Because I think it's too big. It's just too big,
Yeah.
and it takes years to learn it.
Yeah. Well, yeah, Scott. Scott Robertson. He was. I went to school with him. He was my
Oh,
classmate. And
nice.
Scott Robertson, Neville Page, Nick Pugh, and
That's something else.
Craig Mullins was
That's
was a term ahead of me. So we were all moved up to school, and so we were all back. We were all competition. But Scott's book, How to Draw, which is a great book. I have a copy of it. It he
everybody
basically,
has.
but what he did was he basically took the Art Center fundamental classes and made a book of it.
Yeah,
You know,
with a little
and
bit of his,
so what's that?
with a little bit of his twist with the design and the vehicle.
Absolutely, with a certain percentage of his stuff in there. But that book is a great book if you're learning how to design. But I always say, one thing about Art Center, it was very, very, very critical, and you've got to be very, very critical. And when you're walking around or when you're driving around, look at cars. Look at the tail light of a car. Why does it look this way? Is it functional or is it just aesthetic? Same thing with buildings. Look at the design of buildings, look at the design of fashion, have a point of view and an opinion on design, and that will go in you. And then when you do a drawing, you will apply that same opinion to your illustration. It's not just education at school. That's a huge part of it, but you have to also do a lot of traveling, look at different cultures. If you can't afford to travel, go on the internet. It's a great example of, go Google Images, look at different places. God, you know what I do? I go to Google Maps and I go down to Street View in the middle of Tokyo and I look at buildings. Right? You can even do screen grabs, and you can even put those photo bash them into your image.
Yeah, yeah.
You go to Nepal, go to India, in the maps, and walk around and look at these amazing places. If you can't go there on foot but yourself, then you've got a great resource on the internet, and that will educate you. And then look at how all these different cultures have influenced buildings and architecture and fashion and vehicles. It's super interesting.
It is, and thanks God for internet because of that, because that's how I built my design language. I was
Yeah.
looking at things, Google Images, I just would open thousands of
Mm,
images. I would be
yeah.
downloading them every day, each day, putting them on the wall, analyzing NASA spaceship, analyzing
Yeah.
anything that I can find. NASA spaceship, I know inside out, and I never saw it in real life. I know it inside out because thanks to Google Images.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a great educator of things. I've learned a lot from that, from just roaming around
I'm
the internet. Yeah.
I'm very happy that you're talking in this manner about design because there is no strict rule of the learning design. Fundamentals is, but as you're saying, it's experience. You're learning it, and
Yeah.
that's what I really like about this episode of podcast.
Yeah. Well, the thing is that, like, when you're sitting in your room, look around at everything. Look at all the design that is around you that we take for granted.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
someone has designed it, and there's a design for it for a reason. Why does it look a certain way? And it will what happened to me at Art Center is, all of a sudden, it changed. Like, within a week, it changed. My mind changed, and I looked at everything completely different, to the point where it was probably awful to hang out with me, because I was always criticizing. you know oh, I would have done this like this, or I would have done this like this, because all of a sudden you see these things. But the thing is, the first step is that you have to be able to see it, and a lot of people, they don't see it. So it's right in front of you, but you have to actually bring it into your brain, and critique it, and look at it, and see what you could. I always say, look at the most amazing thing, and then, how would you have done that better?
yeah,
And that's a real
yeah.
challenge. Just anything, you walk around and see this stuff.
Observation is everything for
Yeah.
me, and I experience it. If you are afraid to observe or too lazy to observe
Yeah.
things, you will never find the greatness. And I
Yeah.
experienced it also like you did. I was probably also very annoying when I was going around,
Yeah.
and I experienced it again 2 years ago. And
Yeah.
for me, it was very interesting because that freshness that you feel, and I experienced it on a completely different field where I experienced that I don't see things at all or observe them, and that was yoga. I did
Oh,
yoga,
right.
and I understood that I couldn't move my feet in a way in which humans are able to, but I wasn't because I was sitting too much.
Yeah.
And once I observed it and saw it, I had the opportunity to improve it. And I improved it eventually because I couldn't do this with my feet, completely bend them like this
Yeah.
or towards the up. And I completely lost that function. But I did it, and my
Yeah.
walking completely changed. My walking
Wow.
completely changed. And for me, it was the second time in my life that I experienced it. First time was with art, second time was with yoga, and I'm very
Yeah.
interested.
That's great. Yeah, my sister's a yoga teacher, and
Oh,
it's amazing. I've thought about getting into it, but um, um, I've done a little bit of physical therapy on Pilates, and that's quite difficult.
yoga is a bit more difficult, depends
Yeah.
which one. But I highly suggest it to any artist. I
Yeah.
did many sports in my life, but I highly suggest yoga to artists because
Okay.
there is something very good about it, especially for people who think and sit as much as we do.
Yeah, we sit a
Focus
lot
on
too
those
much.
things. Yeah,
I've
we
got to get
sit
I've got to get I've got to get a new table. You know, the tables that rise.
like this.
Yeah. It looks like you're going into a hole. Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly
yeah.
like that. Yeah.
It's very cool, but it's very cool, but I forget to use it literally from how much stressed I can get, and I
Yeah.
completely forget to use it.
Yeah. Yeah. So, yeah, I
Well,
got to get one of those.
You absolutely have to do it. I mean, if you are like me, don't get it because I forget that I have it. Now, when you mentioned, I press the button,
Now,
but I
now
can.
you have to use it. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
We
yeah,
had a. I worked in an office in the visual effects house, and every 30 minutes, we all had three of us had the rising desks,
yeah,
and every 30 minutes, we would we would go, okay, time t- time to raise the desk. We all would raise the desk, and then we would work standing, and then 30 minutes later, time to lower. We would lower. This is the whole day, and then once every hour, we would do 20 push-ups.
yeah, yeah.
Okay, drop. Dun, 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 dun. At the end of the day, you actually felt pretty good, but it was exhausting, you know.
It is exhausting standing that much. It's exhausting, you know. It's like a
Yeah,
hairstylist, literally hairdresser. You're cutting hair.
yeah,
You're.
I know.
I don't know what the balance. I recommend yoga, but with sitting, I have no clue what is the balance. I have no
Yeah,
clue. I
yeah.
have a
It's
feeling
different.
that
It's different. When you did you get how did you get used to did you get used to drawing standing up?
no, it was sitting and standing both, but mostly sitting
Yeah,
for me.
yeah. I can imagine it's a
Now,
bit difficult. Yeah.
I remember reading about Michelangelo when he was painting the like this.
Sistine Chapel. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, Sixteen Chapel, and he was painting like this all the time, and that he injured every bone in his body in those
Oh,
years. It's so they say that it's so unusual for a body, and he didn't know it, and
yeah,
that's why he didn't paint so much later as they
yeah,
expected.
yeah,
Because of that, there are sacrifices to be made. There are
yeah.
sacrifices.
So let me ask you. You live in Belgrade.
Yes, Belgrade, Serbia,
So Belgrade was the old Eastern Europe, and
Central
um,
Europe, in the
yeah,
center,
and
Central Eastern.
yeah, and but it was communist, right?
Yes,
And so you have the communist architecture.
very common. It's like blocks of concrete,
Yeah,
and then
yeah, I love that. I've always loved that, and
you're
of
welcome to
course
visit.
now, of course now everyone talks about brutalist, but I've loved it for a long time. And I was in, I've worked in Prague, and I've worked in, a few years ago, I was on Halo in Budapest,
Ah,
and
very
I would spend like on the weekends, I would spend 7 hours walking around, looking at, just taking photographs and looking at the amazing buildings. It's a very special, interesting architecture. That kind of architecture, and I was just curious if that's what you had in. I should go to Google Maps and have a look, walk around in
I will
Belgrade.
I will send you some of the spots because for me, I'm just used to it. I grew up next to
Yeah,
those. For me, they are normal. I dislike them like
yeah,
concrete. But
sure,
then there were some concept design guys from LA here, and they were
yeah,
like, asking, "Take us there, please. We want to see it." And then they came to some building. They were like, "Oh my god, this is so amazing!" And I was
yeah,
like, "It's a piece of concrete block. What are we talking about?"
yeah,
Concrete block. Give me some USA things. I want to go
yeah,
to New York, to the
yeah,
skyscrapers. I want to go to LA and so on. But for them, it was fascinating. And I
yeah.
mean, when you are all the time around it and nobody tells you it's special, you don't just see it as
You
special,
don't see it, yeah, yeah.
And I grew up. My father grew up in a building. This is a funny story. He grew up in a building, and the building was ultra ugly for me. Ultra
Mm,
ugly. To get concrete, but with those rocks from the river that you take, the French artist.
right.
2012, it was announced as the ugliest building in the world.
Oh,
Ugliest building in the world. And I was laughing so much because it is ugly, I want to say. And it's called television building because it has huge windows that look like television from the 70s.
oh, I'll have to find that.
I will send you all the links
Okay,
on if you need to stream. So yeah.
cool. Yeah, I'll have to
So,
check that out. Yeah, on the show I just did, for All Mankind, the one I was talking about on Apple, the spaceships. They wanted to. There's a part of it where they're in Russia, so they went to
okay.
Bulgaria to shoot Russia, and
Oh, okay.
yeah, some of the location photographs of some of the interiors were like, it was like some of these people were from another planet. I mean, that designed this. Unbelievably crazy, incredible, right?
Communism. Communism. That's also communism there.
Yeah, the shapes and the sculptures, and it was just fantastic, the materials, and really was very interesting.
I will say this to Bulgarians because I hang out with their concept designers. We hang out each other to a lot, and I will tell this to them. I think
Yeah.
they're really happy, but they will say the same thing. It's a piece of concrete. Give us New York.
That's funny.
Communism is everywhere on Balkan, same, and I will send you the links to the buildings in Belgrade. In Bulgaria, I don't know, but I was there a couple of times. They are very similar, very
Yeah.
similar.
Cool.
Sean, it was a pleasure having you. I really enjoyed talking. It was very, very elaborate and detailed, and thank you so much for that.
Yeah. I've been through a lot of stuff, so I have kind of an opinion about things. So hopefully it's helped some people out there.
I think that we will need to do one more because there is so much to learn from you.
Yeah, I'll do another one. No problem.
We have a deal. We have a deal. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Sean Hargreaves. I hope I'm pronouncing it good. It
Yep.
was amazing having him, and I can't wait for another episode, and we will organize it very soon. Hit the subscribe button if you still haven't, and see you another time. Bye.